Good morning, good afternoon. Clean up my area a bit. I am going to give it a few minutes, as I always do, to hopefully have some folks join us today. All right. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. Good afternoon. Hello, Crystal. Happy Sunday, everybody. Thank you for being here. All right. Giving it a couple of minutes and then I'll do my intro and we'll get started. Crystal, thank you very much for the connection. We will have those guests on soon, so thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward to that. Oh, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm getting adjusted to having hair again. Um, I think. I don't know. In case I come on one morning and I don't have it anymore, I don't want you all to get confused. I'm undecided on whether I like hair again. Being bald was amazing. Good morning, Judith. All right, I'm going to kick it off and get us started, and then we'll get into some conversation. Yay, Crystal. Thank you so much again for that connection. I am going to do my intro, and I will say good morning or good afternoon, depending on your location. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is Creating Home, a tiny house series. And this segment that we will host today is the What's Your Question portion of the series, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. The other part of this segment is the conversations on intimate spaces, and I am actually lining up some guests, so you all don't have to just stay in conversation with me on Sundays. We've got some guests coming in. I'm excited about the upcoming guests. So um, I still thank you all for joining me, and look forward to having some conversations with some guests coming up soon. As I introduce myself, I say that I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey, and you will find links to schedule with me in the video description below. And as I'm doing all of that, I try to serve up a lot of representation in this movement along the way. I want us to see ourselves represented, and see ourselves in this movement and know that we belong in this movement. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And if you find this video helpful, the information helpful, please like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notifications so that you'll know when live content is available, or when content just itself is available. So thank you for being here. Crystal, I was speaking to Crystal about some upcoming guests that she connected me to. And I will have them on soon, and I look forward to sharing their story and journey with this group. And so again, thank you, Crystal, for that, making that connection. Good morning, good afternoon, Michelle. Yeah, And I had just said I'm trying to grow my hair. Well, I'm growing my hair. I just decided at some point I wasn't gonna cut it, and then I was so far in the not cutting process that and it was painful. My hair coming back into my scalp, and I had to Google it. Like the having been bald, my hair is kind of coarse, so just it growing, letting it grow out was painful, and I think I was in pain for like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And so once I got past that, I was like, okay, I'm committed a little bit to this. So we'll see how it works out. The funny part is that um, I have an aunt, and I share her on Instagram a lot. My aunt Mary, and she just turned 100 this year, and she has not been a fan of me being bald these last 3 years. She and my uncle since passed, but I think they thought I was having a crisis when I first went over and I was bald, and they made it very clear that they were not fans of me being bald. And so I went over to her house. I guess it's been about a month and a half ago when I had a little bit of hair. And so she made sure to tell me that she liked my hair. And so I told her not to get comfortable with me having hair because at any moment I could decide that I was cutting it back off. And, old people say what they want to say. So she told me that if I cut off my hair, before I cut it off again, to make sure I took a picture and saved it for her so she could remember when I was pretty. So I just I told her I said, you better be glad I really, really love you, because I think I would fight you at this point, because she just says what she means. And now she does that to me. I know she adores me, so I don't take it personal. I just take that she's gonna say what she wants to say. I do not let her talk to other people like that. I do remind her at some point you do have to be nice, and you have to have some decorum in the things that you say. So I do check that for her, for other people, but for me, I just most of the time let her flow. And so that thing was hilarious to me. As rude as it was hilarious. And I just told her, you better be glad I really, really like you, old lady. But anyway, so thank you, Crystal. I was also saying I was excited that I have some upcoming guests, and Crystal was saying we love chatting with you. I appreciate that you all do, because I have been here chatting for the last few weeks as I've tried to line up guests, and you all still show up. So I thank you, thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, day. I hope you've got some sunshine. Well, I'm sure you've got sunshine and warm weather down in Miami. I've got rain and a gloomy day here, so I miss some sunshine. And I I am reminded of, was it 2012? I think it was 2012. I decided in October of 2012 that I was not doing winter, and I packed up. This was before I built my tiny house, and I packed up and moved to Fort Lauderdale. And it was the sunshine and the ocean and the water was a beautiful experience. The people, not so much. And hence why I left. I went back to Atlanta. The people there are challenging. Um, it's a different. It's I think I assumed it was an extension of the South. It is not. It's a different type of people, a different type of um, racism. And so it was a bit much for me. So I left and went back to Atlanta. But I so enjoyed getting up and being able to um, go walk down the A1A and see the ocean in the morning. It was amazing. Um, See, I mean, it is an effort to try to let it grow. Like when you're in between those in between stages, when you're in those in between stages, yeah, I keep looking at the clippers thinking today might be the day that it goes away. Good afternoon, Sandra. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Aunt Mary, yes, Aunt Mary is a trip. She is a whole trip. Um, Michelle says, I've changed my hair a lot, super short locks for 13 years, some growth, now short again. I haven't done bald yet. So I was locked for 14 years. Um, I started out really short, just cut off my hair, but I'm also tender headed. So when I was locked, there wasn't a lot of product like there is available now. And so I would almost cry trying to do my own hair. So that's how I decided that I was locking. And I was locked for 14 years and then went from locks to just a bald head. And it was an amazing experience. Um, it is one of those things where there is nothing to distract you from dealing with yourself. Like when you look in the mirror, it is you, it is all you. And it was a period of growth, self love. It was absolutely amazing. So I know it's not for everyone. And I also know that, I had a choice to go bald. I have a very good friend who does alopecia work and has a bald community that she nurtures and supports. And so I recognize that I had a choice, but it was an amazing experience for me. And so I've recommended that if you're considering it, that you at least try it once. Um, yes, Crystal, my Aunt Mary comes through with the shade all the time. Judith is saying having hair is a full-time job, styling every day, but being beautiful is work. Absolutely, it is work. That was one of the things that I loved about being bald, even though I did still buzz my hair just about every day. The effort was minimal, and I just enjoyed it. Yep, yep, I'm right there with you. Okay, Dave, thank you. Oh, thank you, C. I appreciate you. Welcome. I'm glad you're a new subscriber. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning. Grand Rising. Oh, she's in the mountains. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. So let's see, I had a couple of things to talk about, and then we'll open it up more for general conversation. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about, so Sandra, who is a very active member of this series and always shows up and participates, I am working with her. Um, Sandra has a tiny house, and I'm hoping at some point she'll be willing to share with the community. But working with her in her area to around legalization of her home, placing her home on her property that she owns. And so we had a conversation with the mayor in her area. And one of the things that, and the mayor clearly the mayor doesn't have authority over zoning or building code enforcement. But the mayor in her area, well, they can be influential. And so as many allies and influencers that you can get involved in your process, the better you are. But we reached out to her because we knew she was a tiny house fan. She actually has a tiny house boat that she has on Airbnb. So we reached out and kind of talked to her about Sandra's situation. And one of the things that she shared, and she gave a bunch of a good advice, provided some, excuse me, information that we had not found yet. Um, and one of the things that stood out for me in this conversation, and it has stood out for me in the difference in this journey as I have watched my counterparts proceed, as I have proceeded, as I have conversations and consultations with the global majority. That's what I'm referring to us as Black and Brown people. We're normally there's this saying about what something like ask for forgiveness later, like you proceed and then you ask for forgiveness later. One of the things that I know we don't often have the luxury of doing is proceeding in that way. We have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and proceed with caution, where um, privilege doesn't often know the word no. We're used to no, and we're used to having to make sure we're in this place of doing the right thing and trying to make sure we're in alignment with things, and asking for permission. And one of the pieces of that conversation that stood out with the mayor, as we were talking, she kept saying, "Proceed as if you're in the right." And in when they challenge you in, this isn't legal, or this isn't something that you're allowed to do. Good morning, Teresa. Make them show you. She said, say, show me. Make them prove to you that what you're doing isn't allowable, or make them prove to you that you're out of compliance. Like, at every single point, basically what she was saying is, don't accept their word for it that you're not in compliance, or it's not allowable, or it's not legal. She said, make them show you. Make them show you in writing, and make them show you where it is written in their documentation that whatever it is not allowed. And that is one of the things that I know is a struggle for me. It is often a struggle for our community, because we don't always get to operate from the stance of ask for forgiveness later, or be in the position where you can challenge someone in a position of authority. I mean, we can go back to where that started. We already know where that started. We already know how the laws and things are written so that they don't necessarily always apply for us. I mean, if we want to go to the stand your ground, like, we know that can mean different things for different people depending on your skin color. So we know all of those things, and oftentimes those are the things that subconsciously drive are the motivation, or it's the way that we move through the world. It's the way that we approach things, because we know we have to be in a different position. We have to have more of the documentation, the proof on our side to say we're in the right, or and we're more at their mercy. And I think I've shared this example before, where um, I was going to a tiny house event. I was attending a tiny house event, and I was partnering at that time with a builder. And um, they weren't attending the event, but they had a tiny house that they wanted to have presented at the event. So I took the tiny house down. So I took the tiny house. It was an 18-footer, 18 or 20-footer. Um, and we'd rented a truck. I drove the tiny house down to Atlanta. And as I was getting prepared, hey Vaughn, hey Vaughn, hey Vaughn. As I was getting prepared for going to Atlanta, one of the questions I asked about this tiny house was whether the tags on the tiny house whether the tiny house had tags, up to date license plate on this tiny house. I'm getting ready to take it from the Charlotte area to Atlanta to an event. And the tiny house builders said to me, no, it doesn't have tags. And she said, we don't have tags for it, but we've never had a problem. We just moved the house wherever. We don't have a problem with it. And so I looked at her, and fortunately, these are some people who have some level of awareness. And I said, that won't fly for me. There is no way in the world. First of all, the folks looking at a tiny house going down 85 South for 4 hours is already going to draw attention. A black girl driving a dually down 85 South pulling a tiny house is going to draw attention. The last thing I need is to have a tiny house going down the highway and it doesn't have tags. That just gives an officer a reason to stop me. And I know that to be true. And, you'll have the folks who'll say that we make stuff up, or, all of those things. And I'm not even going into that conversation. We have to operate in a different way. And going back to what the mayor said, and I wrote it down. She said, show me, tell them, show me, make them show you. And Sandra and I spoke yesterday about some of her next steps, and we discussed that. And I reminded her she's got excellent documentation to support what it is that she's trying to do. I feel like she'll be very successful. But one of the things that she is going to stand on is what the advice the mayor gave her is show me. And I'm encouraging myself and encouraging you all. Sometimes I feel like it's a scary place, and I hate to even feel like it's a scary place, but um, for me, as I exist here in rural America, where as I exist in a place where some of these back roads, I don't even go down the back roads, at night, because I see the flags that fly that way. And the last place I want to get stuck or stopped or have an issue on a dark road is in that area. In these type areas, and as I look at the community here, and I know the community to be a little different from what I'm used to in urban areas. I'm trying to think of how I say that nicely. I would, I don't know the best way I can say it with, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I would say um, Black people in rural areas are different from Black people in urban areas. The way they move, um, I almost would say kind of like a level of confidence. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but having existed in both areas, I recognize that there is a difference. And in these areas, it is um, like my example I can give is the when I attended that tiny house festival that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, and ran into the issue with the white man at the store in that area, and a racist white man in the store in that area. And again, people local to that area who were involved in the Tiny House Festival knew that this man was a problem, but nobody had called that out. And I just happened to stop at that store before I went on site to this event, and I had a problem with him. One of the things that I recognized as I was like fuming, like I really, really, I this man had just taken me to the highest height of festivity. Um, and I looked and realized behind me was a Black person. Outside of the store were Black people. But what I recognized was they were kind of used to him, okay with him. And when I look back over my shoulder, I recognize that if I'm getting ready to get with him, if however I'm getting ready to manage this, I'm on my own, because they've accepted his behavior. They're not willing to stand up um, to this, because by now he would not be able to operate in this manner had some of the local folks or local Black folks already gotten with him. But they were, patronizing his store, and his store wasn't even, I mean, it was a little hole in the wall store. But they were standing outside, and I know good and well they knew he was racist, just like I knew he was racist. So that's what I'm saying when I'm saying people in rural areas kind of sometimes move differently. And I'm not characterizing or generalizing all of everybody in rural areas, Black people in all rural areas, or white people as all racist in rural areas before somebody tries to go to that level. Um, but what my point is in trying to move in more assertive ways in handling and in dealing with officials, um, as much as we possibly can without causing detriment or danger for ourselves is one of the things that I hope that we all will do and will remember to do. And the show me reminder um, is something that I'm gonna hang on to. And again, it's just natural for my counterparts, and it's not a natural way for us to often move about. But as we become more and more the global majority, because we are not minorities in this world, um, it is some of the power that I know we have to take back. Um, so yes, Michelle, absolutely. In the past, I asked for forgiveness. It would say, show me, and paid some high prices for it. And I feel it was worth it. Nowadays, I think twice. Absolutely. I mean, we all can see the climate that we're in, and we see the climate as it changes. And we know we have to be more aware and more cautious, unfortunately, and not that we have not ever needed to be cautious, but things are changing where it requires more caution. And so those are things that we have to keep in mind. But I do want us to, in this process, um, move a little more in with confidence so that we are able to also successfully be here in this movement and expect um, that things work in our favor as well. Um, so that was the one thing I had to talk about. Um, and then the other thing that I was thinking about this morning was as I looked out my window. So today is a rainy, gloomy day here. And as the season starts changing, this is one of the things that I struggle with because I'm an all things summer person and sunshine, and that's really where I get my energy. So I struggle. I actually have one of those lights to kind of help me, but for the most part, I try to move around in places that have sunshine and warm weather. But before it started raining, I was laying in the bed and I was looking out of my window and was remembering that outside of my loft window, where now I can see the roof of this added sunroom space. I used to have a Juliet balcony. When I built my house in 2015, there was a balcony there. And I was just thinking in the 8 years, almost 8.5 years, is it eight? Yeah. Um, Thinking how my house has evolved, and then also thinking as I was thinking about how the house has evolved, I was thinking about how I have changed and evolved um, along with my house. And for me, it was just a reminder of how you can start a journey. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to tiny houses, it can be on any journey, any change, any dream that you're following. Um, Knowing that the dream is going to change and evolve over time, as will you. And that is something to keep in mind. Like you'll change. I've shared like some of the ways that I have changed over, like I didn't go into this journey being as cognizant of my footprint in the world. Um, it wasn't like on the high on my list to be more aware of my how I was contributing to waste in the world and my water usage, my electricity usage, and and my consumption, my food consumption. Like I wasn't in that place at that time. I was still the person who, as I traveled with maybe not huge suitcases, but I'd have a nice size suitcase even as I had downsized. And over the course of time, I have gotten to where I am the traveler with a backpack, and I can travel with a backpack um, for quite a long period of time. I again am more conscious of the foods that I consume, so that I can be a better person. I can care more for my health, and trying to pay attention to my footprint in the world and out here with all these animals and trying to coexist with things like snakes, which I never would have imagined myself saying, but understanding that they play a role in the ecosystem, and they were here first, and trying to not be in their spaces and trying to keep them out of my spaces, but also recognizing that I just can't try to kill all of them. Um, Things like that. Um, and then even my mindset in coming into this movement and learning that um, hello, Robert, learning that and that learning is probably not the best word, um, growing into the role of of working or centering Black and Brown people in this movement, because originally when I joined the movement, and I was thinking it was going to change housing, the way we approached housing, and would center the people that were most left out of the movement, Black and Brown people and the unhoused, and recognizing that that wasn't one of the things that so many of the people involved in the movement were interested in. They just wanted legalization of tiny houses in kind of the same manner, just a small house as the way housing currently works. And so then realizing that, or feeling like I had a responsibility to share my journey and how my journey had been different from my counterparts, and almost like I think I really started out like warning us because I had my journey had been so different. Um, and then recognizing that where my counterparts were selling plans and workshops and building houses for, and of course they'll build and and invite us to their workshops, but they are not willing to talk about the challenges that we're going to have in finding a location. And again, finding a location for a tiny house is a challenge for tiny house on wheels is a challenge for um, my ear. No, it's still working. Is a challenge for everyone in the movement, but it becomes a bigger challenge for us because of placement and safety concerns that we have to deal with that I talk about here. And recognizing that my counterparts were willing to ignore that piece of it, and not necessarily even ignore it, fight against the fact that I was trying to ask them to talk about it. So it wasn't ignoring it. It was willful ignorance, because I'm calling it out and I'm asking people to be more aware. I'm asking people to be more aware as they host events, tiny house events in areas that aren't necessarily safe spaces for us to be cognizant of that area. And like when I had the incident at the store, if you all as the planners, if you know that there's a challenge in this area, and you know that Black and Brown people will be attending the event, you have a responsibility to call that out as, hey, FYI, heads up, some caution in this area. Because if you're an event organizer, you have a responsibility for the safety of your attendees, whether you want to admit that or not. The same way people hire security at events, you have a responsibility for the safety of your attendees. And safety of attendees also means if this area is unsafe because of racism, then and you're expecting Black and brown attendees, then you call that out. And so once I recognized, and the interesting thing, so I've shared that I also at some point as I started pushing this um, on people in the community to say, hey, you, if you're the leaders, if you're being seen as the leaders of this movement, then you have this responsibility. If you're being seen as the leaders in this movement and you want to challenge the status quo of housing, then you have a responsibility to challenge the status quo of housing so that it includes the people who have not been previously included, the unhoused and Black and brown folks. And the more I pushed, the more they pushed back. And what I was just going to say, the interesting part is I've shared that I received a threatening anonymous email where someone was telling me they were tired of me calling this out. They were tired of me. Um, I think it was like something like demonizing white people, and and that I had a Black card and all kinds of stuff. And I shared that on Facebook, and it showed up in my memories this week, earlier this week, like Tuesday or Wednesday. So I recognized that this has been, I think, 5 or so years since I got that email. And again, I recognize that I then had a responsibility to, as I've said, build new tables. I wasn't necessarily welcome at those tables if I wasn't if I was welcome at those tables as long as I wasn't pushing the conversation in directions they weren't interested in going in. And so then I realized I needed to build different tables because I had a responsibility. And so when you think about the ways you approach change, or you approach a dream or a new endeavor, you don't necessarily recognize in the beginning the way that dream will change, and the way that you'll change and you'll grow and you'll evolve along with that. Um, and also recognizing, and these are the conversations that I've also had, recognizing that people around you will change. Um, People that maybe started with you at the beginning of the journey may not be there in the middle of the journey, or as you are years into the journey. Um, with sometimes no explanation. Um, People that you expected to be supporters and cheerers that you've supported and cheered may or may not be there. And those are the things that I feel like if you know that up front and you're prepared up front, it's not as um, unsettling, not and it's not as harsh. You expect that not everyone is going to be okay with the changed and evolved you, or they're not always going to be okay with the fact that you're changing because they liked you in this particular way for whatever reason. And so you have to decide whether you want to not change to maintain these relationships, or you have to um, decide if you're still going to follow this um, road of change, this path of change, and see what comes. And but again, evolving and changing are the things that we're supposed to do. Otherwise, you stay in a place and you become stagnant. Um, Stagnant. But the thing about that is, absolutely bring your own table. Um, yes, Teresa, I agree with that. Um, but one of the things, change and growth, I mean, not everybody is willing to do the work because change and growth and all of those things sometimes it's hard work. It requires introspection. It requires extra special. Uh-oh, that one didn't come out right. Um, it requires looking at yourself internally. It requires looking at yourself externally. The way people receive you, the feedback people give you. And so it extras. I'm gonna work on that word. I see it in my head, but I can't get it right now. Somebody will drop it in the chat for me. I know, and I appreciate y'all. But that was the other piece of conversation that I had this morning as I was looking out the window and just thinking about how my house has changed and how I've changed and how this journey has changed me. Um, and maybe even not just the journey, age has changed me. I would probably say I am um, harder than I than I was when I started in this journey. As maybe as a result of some of the things that I've dealt with, in placement as well as in change. Maybe it's age. I just spoke about my Aunt Mary and how she says whatever and she just throws stuff out. Um, maybe that's part of aging. But those are all of the ways. And I just hope that you all recognize that as you're in your journeys. Again, not necessarily tiny house related, but awareness. And I have spoken to that in the video that I did around dreams and following your dreams and what that looks like. And so I'll drop a link to that. But I think the most important thing is knowing these types of things up front before you begin the journey, whatever it is, so that you're not blindsided by it, because sometimes it can be harsh and it can be the thing that throws you off of the journey, and if you're not aware of it. But being prepared is so much more of the a big part of the journey to help you succeed. And so that's kind of what I wanted to speak about as well. C Hall is asking, do you feel secure in finding locations that are safe? Um, uh, Thank you, Michelle. Michelle is saying I have several videos on finding safe places. I do. Thank you very much. So let me write down. So I'm gonna drop the dreams video, and I'm gonna also drop the tiny house placement videos again. And I do talk to that in depth in both of those videos. Um, Doing the due diligence of a location. So in those videos, I talk about all the ways that I've found locations. Um, Doing the due diligence of trying to check out the location, check out the person. I have had success for two locations on Craigslist, and complete strangers. Um, but in conversation in that due diligence and meeting with them and then checking out their property, both of those locations I was in for like 2.5 years, in 2.5 years at the locations individually, so like a total of 5 years. Complete strangers I met on the internet, and it worked out perfectly. The first location I moved from that location, it was my second location after having moved from the RV park where I experienced some racism. I moved to a private property, a gentleman I met on Craigslist, and it was a fabulous location. Ended up kind of being like family. And I moved from that location, one, because it was kind of like in a bowl. It was down in this little gully and there were just tall trees overhead. So I couldn't see the sky. And I really felt like I was in a bowl, and that impacted almost like my outlook. Like I need open spaces. I really love mid rises. Like I need open spaces for dreaming. And so I've kind of felt stuck in that location. And so I started looking for a location closer to the city, and that's the only reason I moved. Oh, no, not only reason. Because of all of those trees and the high grass, there were also a lot of snakes there, and my snake journey is evolving. Thank God I don't see a lot of snakes out here, but there was always a snake out there, and that was just torment for me. Like I'm not that evolved. Um, so those were like my two things for moving from that location. And then the next place I went to after that, I also found that gentleman on Craigslist and was there for 2.5 years until the city actually made me move. And that was my perfect location because I was in the city. I was 3 miles from uptown Charlotte. Charlotte calls there downtown uptown. And so I enjoyed being in the city. I enjoyed being in the neighborhood. I enjoyed being around my people. And until the city made me move. But as far as safety, so then from there, the next place I went to was a rural area, not as far out as where I am now, and I experienced problems in that area with racism. I was on a farm, and so I should have been safe on private property. Like I was on property that was big enough that like they were the immediate neighbors on that piece of private property were not bothering me. The problems happen because racists don't know boundaries, and so they were coming on private property to bother me. And so that it wasn't the property, it was the people in the area who don't understand signs that say private property. And privilege is a hell of a drug. And so that was what the concern was there. And so I ended up moving because they would come on the property at night and things like that. Um, I said all of that to say, because your question is really around safety. So now I'm on a friend's property. I'm in the cut, and nobody really knows where I'm located. It's not a main road where I'm located. And so, again, safety is relative. I am kind of out here alone, and so that can be concerning. Um, I have alarms. I mean, I have cameras. I have an alarm system. I have a personal weapon. Again, so that is physical safety. I think my most concern is it gets dark out here, but I've got plenty of light. My second concern is out here is probably animals, wild animals. I do hear coyotes. They don't necessarily come that close. I've seen one coyote, and that was in the daytime, but I hear them. Um, and I've already said, in certain areas I don't go into at night because of potential problems because I know that, I see the flags that fly. I'm not scary. So I'm not really scary, I guess I should say. That one day I came home and the power was out for like 3 miles around and it was pitch dark. Now I was scared that day. I've never seen darkness like that before in my life. Um, but I'm generally not scary. So I guess it depends on your outlook. I think the way we have to move about in the world now, the fears that I have here are the same fears that we need to have going in a Dollar General, now basically because it's not just this rural area that we could be unsafe in. So I don't necessarily operate from a place of fear, but I'm also very aware of of danger, and I do the things to protect myself. I plus all of that, the matching service that I have been offering for the last couple of years. Um, it's the Black farmers and Black tiny house owners, that matching service. Um, and I'm excited about that because I have been doing that for a couple of 3 or 4 years now. It's been a manual matching process with a spreadsheet and emails, and so that is a offering that I have because of the challenges that I've had. This is the offering that I wanted to provide to our community to help Black farmers who are having their land stolen, help them financially, and then help Black tiny house owners, current tiny house owners, future tiny house owners find a location. And so I am in the midst of having an app developed to facilitate that process so that it is not because I can't manage it. It has grown so much. So that is one of the ways, and that will center. Black and brown safety in identifying whether property is Black owned. If it is not Black owned, identifying whether the property owner is aware and will support the challenges that Black people encounter. Because I don't want it to be a place where people just come in and say, I've got property, I'm looking for a renter. There has to be some responsible, if it's a non-Black person, there has to be some responsibility and ownership for ensuring some safe, and I don't want to say ensuring like it's nothing they can really do to ensure safety, but I want them to be aware and just not be on the site to look for a renter for financial gain. So that is, I'm developing that in that manner so that it has Black and brown safety in mind. Um, I hope I've answered your question. One of the things that I would say is, um, for me, the bonus has always been that I knew my house had wheels, and I would relocate if I knew I was in a situation that just not didn't work out or where I felt unsafe. And I always say that right now, legal, since not all areas, again, the West Coast is doing a better job, but not all areas allow tiny houses. So I say it's not for the faint of heart. Like, you have to be more willing to assume a bit of risk in that you may have to relocate. But it's not impossible, as I have been in my house since 2015. So it just kind of knowing yourself would help answer the question whether you would feel okay in joining the movement now, whether you'd feel safe in the movement. And so those are the things that I would say consider. And I really hope I've answered your question. I feel like I rambled on a lot there. Um, um, yes, Crystal, I concur. Um, Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. And shout out to Teresa again. She connected me with her cousin Billy, who has helped me in this journey finding a solution for um, the application for the matching. Crystal, yes, it is definitely an age. It is an age thing. Um, Robert shared a quote from John Lewis: "You must be bold, brave, and courageous, and find a way to get in the way." Absolutely, I agree with that. Very wise man and truly missed. Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, Shirley. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Judith says, I do not like snakes either. However, I would love me some snakeskin boots and, and bag. Interestingly enough, I cannot stand the sight of snakes. And with that, am not a fan of snakeskin boots and bags. Like, it's just something about the skin. Like, I can't even look at them. So yeah. I'm gonna let you have them. And you're welcome to come out here and get you some. Thank you, Shirley. Stay safe being solo, and of course, stay armed. I'm okay with that. Yes, absolutely. Teresa says you need solar panels and solar power. That is absolutely on my to-do list. So right now I am having to deal with a very expensive electrical problem. Very expensive, that is breaking my heart with the money that I'm about to have to spend. So long story short, the my wiring in I don't even really think I will say it was somewhat petty. So last location, before moving to this location, I had gotten set up there at the location. Property owner, the farm, it was a farm. I was the only person out there for the time that I was there. The property um, owner was not necessarily honest in communications and things that he had supposedly done to ensure I was approved to have my home there. And so then at some point I was required to move my home, but I was already moving because of racism. But it came out later on that he had not been truthful in getting permission like he had said that he had. And so as I was moving, one of the things I had invested in infrastructure, my wiring, and that stuff isn't cheap. And so as I was moving, I had the friend whose property I'm on, he pulled the wiring out of the ground for me, hooked the one into his truck and pulled it out of the ground for me. Petty, in a way, but I also had spent a lot of money in infrastructure, and I just wasn't going to leave it for the property owner who had been dishonest to take advantage of. Like he wasn't trying to pay me for my work. So I was like, I'm taking my wire. I own it. And so the wire got damaged somewhat as it got pulled out of the ground. Like pulling it out did something to the wire, and it has worked beautiful. I knew it was damaged when we used it here. It has worked beautifully, gratefully for 3 years, but now it is breaking down, and so I have to replace that wiring, and I also need bigger, um, more powerful wire. I think it's bigger wire. I think that's the right way to say it. And the distance of where I get my power from is about the barn that I get my power from is about 400 feet, 350, 400 feet. So bigger wire, 400, 350, 400 feet of wire is expensive. I also have to upgrade the boxes on the side of my house in the barn, and then the labor, for all of that is about to be a mint that I have to spend to updo all of this work. And I keep saying if I just invest in solar or had invested in the times that I paid for infrastructure over and over, um, I wouldn't continue to have this problem. So I really should try to find a sponsor for solar that maybe I can partner with, or a generator. Like I looked at some Generac, is that the company name? I think that was the company name. A backup power source. I'm overspending money on infrastructure, and this is getting ready to be painful. But yeah, I have to do that, and I do need solar power and panels. Yes, Sandra. Yes, yes, yes. Um, Robert is saying we are much alike, you and I. I'm an avid motorcycling traveler. I go in areas where it is prudent to be aware of my surroundings also, but I still go. Yeah, I'm not getting ready to venture into a clan meeting, but I'm also not getting ready to let them keep me from traveling places or being in spaces um, that I want to be in. So yeah. Uh, A Tiny House Green Book, sad but still true. Living in America 2023. Absolutely. That is absolutely right. I'm also going to drop. So, the matching service that I do is cooperative communities. And then I also have collective communities for travelers who want to connect with Black owned RV parks and campgrounds, etc. So I didn't do the back end work, but I have a link to the work that Lucretia, I think that's her name, did. And so I'll drop both of those links, because the collective communities in as I was sharing that information was absolutely a green book that along the lines of a green book so that we can travel safely. And both of them, the cooperative communities, the matching, is also for us to be safe, and very disappointing and disgusting that we still have to have this conversation in 2023. Um, take the money you're about to drop and do solar instead. It is, I need to, yeah, that is, I don't know that the money that I'm about to drop will be enough to cover solar. I have a, a a big, like a high load, so I also need somebody to come in and do the analysis. So it's finding the person that knows how to do it and all of that stuff. And my wire is breaking down like now, like before. As it's breaking down, it's tripping at the main box. So even before, it's raining here, and so wetness and everything kind of makes it trip. And so before I even got on live here, I had to go down and flip the power. So I'm also kind of in a race against time. So I got to figure out all of that. Um, and so Michelle, where you said you keep seeing articles about North Carolina where you can get solar and only have to pay for the labor. Some of that stuff, as it's associated with the power company, is also associated with homes that are legal. And so I have to be careful. Like I know exactly what you're talking about, the ads I see all the time. I also have to be careful in the connections that I make and kind of put myself out there in that I'm in that gray area and don't necessarily want to call attention to where I am. So it is still kind trying to find the person to work with. Hey, 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 welcome. Okay, I need to connect with you to see if that might be good. I just said sponsor and look at this. Okay, thank you, thank you. Happy Sunday. Thanks for being here. Um, Randy Jones isn't of color, but he has a solar towable solar he developed. Is that something that would work for you? I'm not familiar with it, so I need to write that down. Maybe it is something that would work for me. Um, I will write that down and try to look that up. Randy Jones is that incredible tiny house dude? Um, hmm. Okay. So I put it out here in the universe, and I got all these answers in the chat of things that I need to investigate. Okay, that's something I'll look into. Thank you all very much for the leads. I should have asked the community, but I've got to look into that. Judith, thank you for being here. Take care. Have a great week. Um, it is 1 o'clock. What is? I'm not. I'm not dropping the last comment from Robert. Robert is cutting up. I'm not dropping that one, but thank you, Robert. Um, all right. Um, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I do hope I answered the question about finding locations, safe locations. I will drop all of the links that I mentioned around the communities, and that's all I have. I think it's next week. Next week is um I'll have a guest, and I'm excited about the guest. I'm not even in Tennessee. Okay, yes, thank you. That's exactly what I thought it was. Thank you. Um we will have a guest, and I'm excited about the guest. I'm not even going to give it away because I want y'all to have to wait. But I'm excited to share her journey. She's doing something different in the tiny house movement, and I'm excited. It is part of the conversation that we were just having last week about thinking outside of the box of how to use tiny houses, which might be a clue to you all who were, if you were listening and here last week. So I'm excited about next week's guest. Um, that's all I got. Yes, Crystal. Um, Robert is cutting up, and that's all we're going to say about that. Thank you, Robert, for being concerned for my safety. I appreciate you. Um, Teresa says, Robert, you make me laugh every week. Me too. Um, we appreciate the laughs and the care and all of those things, Robert. Thank you for joining on Sundays to keep us entertained. We need joy on Sundays. My shirt is talking about black love. Usually, my shirt says black love is black power. But I usually have on I have another one that says black joy is revolutionary and black power. So, but we need the joy in these spaces, and so I appreciate you all sharing that here. Okay, what else? Is there anything else I need to cover? Any questions that I can answer? I swear every Sunday I keep trying to figure out what we're going to talk about, and we make it into a great conversation. So, thank you, Crystal. I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited as well. That's all I got. I don't see any other questions. I am going to close out. I hope you all have a beautiful Sunday and a beautiful rest of your Sunday and a great week. And as always, I thank you all for being here. I hope to see you. Um, I'm excited today. I hope to see you all next Sunday and have a great week. So, again, this has been the What's Your Question portion of the Tiny House series. And next week, we will have a conversation on an intimate space with a guest that I'm looking forward to sharing with you all. Um, Thank you, Crystal. I again ask you to like the video, share the video, um, encourage others to join this community, and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already so that you'll get the notifications. Thank you for joining. I hope everybody has a great Sunday. I was getting ready to say Saturday, like I could use another day for real. But this is Sunday. So take care, everybody, and we'll talk again soon.